What's up, guys? It's Smart Basketball back here again with some more NBA content. You guys have been starving for it. I've been away for 3 months doing stuff. I'm back now. Don't worry, I know you missed me. And today we're talking about the fact that this season, more than any other we've recently seen, is so uncertain, even this close to the championship. And what I mean by that is that we are a couple months away from the championship games being held, and we still really don't have a clear picture of who we'd expect to win and what we expect to happen in the playoffs. So, right now, I'm going to give you a rundown of what's happening in the playoffs, where the standings are, and why it's so unpredictable this season. So, the first thing to do is obviously just going to be to go through the standings. Number one in the East is Philadelphia, and they recently retook that spot from the Nets. They're probably a lock to stay there for the rest of the year because the Nets have a really tough schedule after this, and they have enough of a lead over Milwaukee that I don't see them losing it. So Philadelphia is probably going to keep the number one seed. And of course, the number two seed is the Nets, and they've been faltering. They've lost four in a row, and they're playing Denver tomorrow, and they have a tough schedule the rest of the year. So you might expect to see them to drop to three, probably not four, because of how far away they are from that spot. But they could definitely drop to three before the end of the season. Then you got Milwaukee. Milwaukee's been playing pretty great, two good wins on the Nets. But if they're probably just going to stay at three or two, not really going to take over the one spot from the Sixers. There's nothing crazy from them yet. And then four through eight in the playoffs for the East, there's not much to talk about. Well, I shouldn't say that. There's not much to talk about in terms of who's going to get those top three spots because that's pretty much a lock for Philadelphia, Brooklyn, and Milwaukee. But those last few spots are interesting. Right now, the Knicks have the four seed and the Hawks have the fifth seed. And the Hawks have been playing out of their mind these past few games. And it's kind of surprising to see them this high in the playoffs after not seeing them here at all these past couple seasons. And it's the same case with the Knicks. I mean, this is their first playoff series in almost a decade, so this is a really crazy experience for them. And right now, they are set up to play each other as the 4 and 5 seed, and then face Philadelphia in the second round if Philadelphia keeps the 1 seed. And honestly, that means that there's probably going to be a pretty easy road for whoever gets the 1 seed in the East, assuming these standings stay the same. Because New York and Atlanta, while they are playing great, in a playoff series, you're probably not going to expect them to do that well. And then you have the next series, Milwaukee versus Miami, which is a rematch of last year, right, when Miami won. But I could definitely see Milwaukee taking it this year with the addition of Drew Holiday and just stepping it up, really, especially because Miami's been faltering this year. The really interesting thing, though, for the East this year is the play-in tournament, and you guys knew that I had to talk about this. I mean, it's crazy what could happen here. So right now, the play-in tournament, number 7 and number 8 are Boston and Charlotte, and then 9 and 10 are Indiana and Washington. And this is crazy. So Boston is probably going to beat Charlotte in that first round series, in the 7 versus 8 series, and then go on to face Brooklyn in the first round, which is obviously a rematch of Kyrie against his old team. You know that series is going to get heated, but I would still see Brooklyn walking away with that just because of all the firepower they have. And then the other series is Indiana versus Washington. This one, I'd expect it to go to Washington. Washington really isn't as bad as they appear to be. Because, I mean, think about it. They have Russell Westbrook, Bradley Beal, and a ton of good players. Well, good might be a strong word, but decent players around them who can help. Like Davis Bertans, when he wants to, is a great addition to that team. And again, Russell Westbrook, former MVP, Bradley Beal, amazing scorer. They could definitely, they should win that series. So what that would leave is then Washington and Charlotte facing each other in the next play-in tournament game, and obviously Washington's going to win that. I wouldn't really see much of a case for Charlotte there, and that would leave Washington taking the eighth seed, and they could give Philadelphia a run for their money in the first first seed versus 8 seed series because, I mean, like I said, Washington, they have an MVP. They have one more MVP than Philadelphia does, although Joel Embiid could win this MVP this year, which, we can talk about in a later video if you guys want. But yeah, I still would see Philadelphia taking that series. Again, they are just the better team. But here's the thing. In the East, there are really three teams that we would expect to make it out of the playoffs. Philadelphia, Milwaukee, and Brooklyn. All of them have a good shot of making it to the finals. But again, anything can happen in these series. Anyone can knock someone off. Miami might have figured Milwaukee out after last year, and they might take them out in that first round. So much can happen. That's why this year is unpredictable. And then we have the next series, or the next conference, I should say, which right now has Utah and Phoenix and the 1 and 2 seeds respectively. And they've been battling it out throughout the year. Phoenix has usually been on the tail of Utah, although they recently got the 1 seed and then lost it a little bit after gaining it, which, isn't great for them. But still the 2 seed, still playing great basketball. Chris Paul, Devin Booker, DeAndre Ayton doing amazing. I mean, this is the epitome of the Chris Paul effect. Taking one of the worst teams we've seen in the past few years, even though they have good players, and just completely bringing them to the top of the top. That's why teams want Chris Paul, right? Utah, another great one. After losing 3-1 in the playoffs in the bubble last year to the Nuggets, they've been playing out of their mind. They're a deep team. They have a great star player in Donovan Mitchell and defensive presence in Rudy Gobert. Great shooting and defense around those guys. Like, they play team basketball. That is team basketball epitomized. And then you can go down the list. So right now you have the 3 seed Los Angeles Clippers and 6 seed Los Angeles Lakers, who are on track for a first round matchup. And that would be a crazy series. I mean, we didn't get to see it last year, but seeing the LA battle would be great. I still would put the Lakers on top, assuming they're healthy, and that's a big if. We really don't know how Anthony Davis is going to be, if LeBron will be back. There's so many ifs there, but with the addition of Andre Drummond, I would expect the Lakers to beat the Clippers in that series, just based on past events. Although, don't count the Clippers out. Kawhi is still the LeBron stopper. Paul George, when he wants to, is great. They've choked in the playoffs before, but we'll have to see. But yeah, if that's a first round series, that'll be amazing to watch. And then the next one, we have Denver versus Dallas. And this is another really interesting series. Two, smaller market teams that haven't really been in it for a while, but now they're rising to the top, and this should be a really good matchup. I would expect Denver to win this one, although, I forgot about Jamal Murray. Jamal Murray being out obviously changes the whole thing for Denver, even though they've won a lot of their games without him. But in a playoff series, having that scoring is really necessary, especially since he's proven that he can step up in those big moments. But yeah, honestly, that one, I'm leaning towards Denver. That's such a pitched battle, though. It is so tough to see there. And again, that's why this year is so hard to predict who's going to be on top. We have no clue. Like the number 1 and 2 seeds in the West, Utah and Phoenix, man, theoretically they'd have the best shot, but they haven't been in it for so long. Devin Booker, DeAndre Ayton, no playoff experience. Donovan Mitchell hasn't had a ton either. It just, those 1 and 2 seeds might not really be the best teams in that conference. I mean, there's so much, so much in question there. And then, of course, the play-in tournament, which is even more interesting in the West. You have the 7th seed Portland Trailblazers and the 8th seed Golden State Warriors. And that'll be a really interesting matchup. That one game, Damian Lillard versus Steph Curry. I can imagine all the deep threes they'll be taking, really trying to prove who's better than who. I mean, that would be an amazing game to watch there. I would give the edge to Golden State just because I think Curry is a better player than Lillard, and I think Curry can definitely take his team to that victory. And just because he's better, I'm going to put him over Lillard in that game. And then the ninth and 10th seed, Memphis and San Antonio Spurs. And I think that one probably, well, I was going to say it's going to go to Memphis, but now that I'm thinking about it, I mean, DeMar DeRozan could definitely help San Antonio win. That one's a toss up, honestly. That I'm going to go with Memphis because they are the higher seed, and I think Ja Morant can do some work on San Antonio. But yeah, that one's such a toss up there. And those series would lead Golden State Warriors, assuming they win, to play Phoenix in the first round, which again, you can probably count on Phoenix winning. And then Memphis or San Antonio playing Utah in the first round, and Utah's probably going to win that one. Um, yeah, again, really not too much there. That's not as interesting as the playoff play-ins in the East, but there's still definitely a lot of intrigue. But I mean, as I'm wrapping up this part about the playoffs and the standings, you can see there are so many teams that we could expect to win. I mean, seeds 1 through 6 in the West all have a decent shot of going to the finals. Seeds 1 through 3 in the East all do. That is 9 teams that could potentially go to the finals. So there's so much in question here, and that's why it's so hard to predict this season. And then of course, now I'm gonna go into what some models are predicting the season outcomes to be, and that's specifically the 538 model, which is a pretty well known, pretty standard models for predicting NBA games. So right now, that model has the Clippers with the best shot of winning the finals, followed by the Sixers, Jazz, and Nets, which is definitely an interesting format right there. I mean, that takes into account the difficulty of schedule and all that stuff. And, I mean, like I said, I kind of predicted the Clippers to lose in the first round if they have to play the Lakers. Again, assuming the Lakers are healthy, but I don't entirely disagree with this. I'm biased, just so you know. I'm a Nets fan, so obviously I think the Nets are going to win it all. But, I mean, I could definitely see the Clippers making it. I'm not totally against this list. The 76ers could too. And then after that, they have Bucks, Lakers, Suns, Nuggets in that order, and then there's a drop off to the other teams. They put the Celtics behind the Trailblazers, which is interesting, because the Trailblazers are deep in the play-in tournament right now. It's crazy to think that the Trailblazers have a better record than the Celtics right now. Yeah, and then Vegas. So we can talk about the Vegas odds for who's going to win the championship. Vegas has been consistent in keeping the Nets after the James Harden trade, saying that the Nets will win the championship. After that, it's followed by the Lakers, and then a big drop-off in percentage to the Clippers, Jazz, Bucks, 76ers, Suns, in that order. So, obviously, I wish that this were the case, because I'm a huge Nets fan, like I said. And this model is probably reflective more of, since it's a betting model, it's reflective more of star power. So the Nets having a lot of star power are gonna obviously be higher up there. Lakers gonna be up there. Clippers up there, and that's why the Jazz fall to the fourth, even though they're the 1 seed in the NBA overall. But anyway, that's just a quick rundown of why this season is so difficult to predict. I hope you enjoyed it. Please tell me if you like it. Tell me if you didn't like it. I want to keep doing these. I'm going to have a lot more time to do them now. I'll be able to go into more in depth on some of these, but this was just an interesting topic I wanted to cover really quick, and just to let everyone know that I wasn't dead, and this channel is still going. So, thanks guys, and I'm signing off for now. This is JB. Keep pushing the pace.